welcome to Bury Our Bones with Cinema, a podcast that lives, breathes and dies classic movies, not so classic movies and everything in between. I am once again joined by the Oasis to my Blur, the wonderful Mr. Simon Key. In today's episode, we dust off the camcorder and head into the woods with 1999's The Blair Witch Project. So join us as we ask the locals about some urban legends, carve some twigs into pagan wind chimes, and finally try not to go into any abandoned houses and stare longingly at the corners of the room. This podcast contains spoilers.
I'm ready, Ryan.
So the Blair Witch Project, now we were just speaking before we pushed the record button that you've never seen the Blair Witch Project before. So I'm going to head straight over to you and say, what did you think of it? First impression.
Pass the buck, Ryan. I just started.
I know.
Throwing it my way. Dun, 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 dun. I watched this earlier today, and when Christina rang me up when she was on her way back from work, just before she's ringing to say like, oh, I'll be at home at this time, have a quick chat before she sets off on her journey. I was like, Christina, I need to carry on.
Now is not the time.
I need to carry on with the movie because I had 10 minutes left, for all of the movie, I was like, it's gonna make you jump. It's gonna make you jump. It's gonna make you jump, and it hasn't got the jump scare really, I was, I always knew that I'd probably like this film, to be honest, and I didn't ever watch it as a kid. I heard about it, I think, from my brother's friend Jordan. It was really into like cool movies, and I know a bit of the sort of history about it. That some people, they sort of marketed it as if it was real, and some young people fell for that a bit, and they put some documentaries out and stuff like that, which is all very cool. But I guess what I had in my head is some shaky hand camera footage and some scary stuff happening. I had no idea that it was also psychological, to be honest. And I think, some of it's improvised. You probably know, I guess. I think it's like improvised and that. And I didn't know that the story would, I don't know, it's just really captivating. I think really like the leading lady is just, I really like her character from the beginning. I like how she's sort of grating and a bit annoying, and then as a movie unfolds, it all just goes down the pan, and it feels so real. Like at some points, I was like, "Is this like overacted?" And I was like, "Actually, this just feels real to me." Like, and it reminded me of a bit like you were telling me earlier, Ryan, how you got stuck up in Manchester, not in Manchester, you're on the train down, your train was really delayed. It sort of, it feels like when I go to a festival, and me and Christina used to get the coach to this festival up north. We get the train to get the coach, and then we'd have to get the coach there, and we'd have to unload all our stuff and walk it, and then set up the camp in the rain. And like the horribleness of it, and it feels like it just gets worse and worse and worse. And this movie, you feel like, even without the Blair Witch lurking in the background or whatever's going on, whatever the mystery surrounding that is, it's just like three people get lost in the woods. Yeah, it blew me away, to be honest. I love it.
Well, that's quite reassuring to hear, actually, because I think I was a bit worried, because I think watching it back now, bearing in mind this is, 25 odd years old now, and the found footage genre has been done to death. Whether this was the first, I'm not sure, but it is certainly the one that popularised the genre. I think it probably is one of the first, purely because of the technology at the time. But watching it back, unless you kind of invest in it and give it time and give it its chance, it can be quite easy to kind of be switched off and be a bit sort of, negative towards it. So it's quite positive to hear that you actually really liked it, because it was a film that I heard all those stories, and I think it stuck with me for a while, because I watched this when I was about 10, so obviously far too young to watch a film like this. But of course, I'd heard those stories, probably from my sister. Sounds like something she would do. And believed it, because as a 10-year-old, why wouldn't you believe it? You know, that this is all real. And, you know, at that point, I wasn't able to work out and go, well, if it was all real, how did they get the footage? And how did they edit it all together? And all of those kinds of things. So believed all of that press and marketing and those rumors and all of those things that feed into that, you know, that folklore, which this film is 100% about. It's about folklore. It's about urban legends, and how, you know, I think this is the epitome of less is more, and it's more about what you don't see, and it's more about those things that are in the shadows that never quite reveal themselves. I like the fact you never really know what the fuck's going on. Like, you never get that moment where it's like, okay, and now we see the Blair Witch. We never get that moment, and we never have that moment. And you are left with a lot of questions at the end of the film. You're going, well, what the fuck happened there? Like, was it all in their heads? Was it a case of they were just going crazy in the woods? Was there actually a Blair Witch? Was it a joke or prank that went too far? Who knows? And the fact that we don't know just means it's a bit more mysterious, and obviously feeds into that, you know, that kind of rumor mill that the whole film was marketed on, you know. And this was, by and large, the success of 1999. Like, yes, there were films that made money, but none to the quite same extreme as what this did, based on how much it was spent. It was even in the Guinness World Records book, for the amount of money it made in comparison to the amount of money that was spent on it. So the film only cost $60,000 to make, and it made back $248 million.
That is quite an insane,
which is absolutely insane. I mean, that's kind of everybody's, like, every independent filmmaker's dream, isn't it? To spend, well, obviously to them at the time, $60,000 would have been a lot of money, but in movie terms, that's, you know, that's loose change. So just to put that into perspective, that made for every dollar spent on that film, it made $10,391 back. So that is very, 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 very profitable, you know. And to think that this was made by independent filmmakers, they, you know, the three main cast members, whilst they are performers, they weren't named performers. They, you know, their names are the same as their character names, so adds to the realism, adds to that whole feeling that this is real and this is all happened, or maybe it's based on stuff that's happened. And it's just one of those films that kind of only comes around every so often. You don't get, you know, films like this all the time that are this kind of, has this kind of feel, and everybody's talking about it, you know. And obviously in 99, whilst I wasn't, you know, on the film forums and things like that, but it got to a point where I knew about the film. I watched the film and I heard a rumor about the film. As a 10-year-old, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy that it was in the ether for us growing up, because it really was in the background. And me and you have, our brother and sister were in the same, like, class at one point, which is interesting. So you know, it was clearly like we all knew about it, and I don't know what I would have been doing that age, just playing video games probably. And
certainly not going into the woods and camping for a while.
I mean, from the beginning, like, it's the leading, what's her name? Sorry.
So yeah, I'll go
Heather,
through so the character and actor name. So we have Heather Donahue, who plays Heather Donahue.
Yeah.
We have Joshua Leonard playing Joshua Leonard. We have Michael C. Williams playing Michael Williams. So 3 virtually non-stars, you know, very early in their careers, and totally authentic.
Yeah. What really got me with her immediately is that she's like, I just want to tell the story as it is of the Blair Witch. You know, it's interesting enough. Like, I don't want to make it cheesy. And then it pretty much cuts to her at one point, and she's like going, back in the time of this, and she's like, and she's quite a cheesy person, and I don't know if that's like I think she must, I think she knew what her character was, or something. Like she just seems bang on. Like I've met people like her before.
Yeah, that sort of person who has no self-awareness
Yeah.
whatsoever, where they think what they're doing is telling an authentic, genuine story, and they're sitting there in a clearly posed sort of setup with a book, reading, and it being really cringe, and you're just going,
A very ghost story.
yeah.
Like, I'm about to tell a ghost story.
Yeah,
Like that.
it's like you've literally fallen into the cliche you were trying to avoid, but because of that, it feeds. The fact that all of these characters in their own ways are incredibly naive, and it's strange because it's a film where when you've seen genres like this and they go on a life of their own, and you see them in every single facet in every single way, shape, or form, it's hard to kind of remember a time when this was new and this wasn't something that had been done to death. And looking back, I can see why all of those failed, poor knockoffs didn't work, and it's because of things like trying to do too much. Things like the people in there are trying to, big up the situations and really sort of ironically do exactly what Heather's character says. I want to tell the story just as it is, and I don't want any cliches. Okay, in the film, their film becomes that kind of thing, but from us, the viewer, the actual film isn't cliched. It becomes cliched because of what comes after it, but it isn't cliched. It isn't all the things you've seen 100,000 times before.
It's kind of mental that there was one line actually that I was like, I've heard a lot since. I don't have heard it before. Damn, 4 kids never learn. Like, what did you say? It's when they meet the fisherman, and then one of them sort of mutters something under his breath, and like, oh, he could be in on it. Turns out, I think one of the original ideas was them two to be.
It was all going to be a prank, and they were just playing a joke on the 3.
But I'm glad that I'm glad there wasn't him.
Well, that's the thing.
But you don't know.
We don't know, and that's the beauty of it, is that some people will have that theory and say, yeah, okay, and okay, the director and writers may have come out and may say, well, this is how our story ends, but it's open ended enough that you can kind of draw your own conclusions from it, and the fact that we can draw our own conclusions from it makes the prospect of it far more scarier, because we don't really know what's happened. We haven't got a clear, we can't reason anything away because we haven't got the end product. We haven't got the final page of the book.
It is it must have been so tempting. I know there are opportunities and plans at some point to see like someone in a white sheet, as a ghost, or, or just to see something. I think there was one scene when they were supposed to film something and they missed it. So, and you never really see much at all. At some points, you're watching it and it's so much about the sound, like, and another cool thing is that, you're getting the sound from one of the characters. He's the sort of sound guy. So it makes sense that it sounds quite good. But yeah, at some point, like, I bet editing this together, you're like, oh, I can't use that bit because you're literally looking at a wobbly stick or a wobbly bit of tree. And it's just, there's these quite long shots of it just wobbling or pitch black, with just sound happening, and it's just all in there, and it just feels like almost kind of masterfully done. But maybe in that kind of higgledy piggledy, that works. Stick that together, that works. And sometimes that's just the best. I can't think of another film, even like found footage ones, where they don't feel more cut down than this. It feels like it really has room to breathe. And just about, I would say, for me, I don't know about you, just as the feeling I got 2/3 of the way through was probably, or maybe right near the end, I was just about to get fatigued of being lost in the woods. Maybe like what they're like, maybe at that point, like, oh my God. And I wasn't bored, but I was hoping that it was going to step it up a notch. And just as I had that sort of feeling, they were like, oh, they're going to this house. And I was like, good. Like, I was really excited about that because I was like, I needed a final boss or like or an end place that wasn't just the woods.
Yeah, there needed to be some sort of like journey. It's not just going to end, as it kind of started in the woods and not really knowing. I mean, as I say, not that you kind of know what's going on, but if it had just ended with, it being in the woods, it would have probably been a bit anticlimactic. The fact that we see it all lead to a somewhat conclusion means that we kind of we get just enough to question shit without it being, spoil. And I think that's probably where I was coming from earlier, saying about how a little bit concerned for newcomers to the movie after, years and years of found footage movies, because in all fairness, in terms of the creepy stuff that happens, there isn't a lot. Like, it's not a case of it's straight away, you get creepy stuff happening. It takes quite a while in in an hour and 20-minute film. It takes a bit of time before you get some creepiness. And even then, it's not ultra creepy. It's not like ultra weird. It's just things like, oh, these stone sculptures weren't here when we sat down for camp, and now they are here. It's pretty creepy, but it's not so creepy that you go, what the fuck? It's, I've seen films where there's really sort of like obscure, strange imagery, and it's proper like, proper creepy. And it's not that here. And I think one of the beauties of it is, as you were saying, it's far more psychological than just they go into the woods and some creepy shit happens. There's an element of, is the creepy shit happening because they're so tired and they just want to get home and they, can't find their way out of the woods? The fact they all start turning on each other, and the fact that they, at all points have a go at each other like you would, and it's very real, it's, being lost with Hannah, for example, is a moment where we would just snap at each other. I would blame her, she would blame me, and we would have an argument because that's what's going to happen. And here it happens, and the whole thing about the map, later on where I think is it Josh or is it, I can never,
the other one actually,
the other one, Michael, sorry, Mike. He goes, look, you don't know what you're looking at. Like, we've been following you for a day now, and we don't know where we are. Just admit it, that map isn't doing anything. And she's going, no, I know where I am. I know what I'm doing. And then, the map goes missing in inverted commas. And later on you find out Mikey stole it. He's like, it wasn't doing anything. And she gets really annoyed. I knew where we were. I knew. And there's an element of going, well, did she know where they were? Or was it a case of, there's all these questions and all these, things that are kind of unresolved, because it very clearly hints that they're totally lost. They've been walking around in circles, but they don't actually walk around in circles until the map goes missing.
Yeah, okay. Well, you don't. Yeah, you don't necessarily.
Do you know what I mean? It's all, and it's that thing of being in a strange place that all kind of looks the same, and having to trust somebody is quite a vulnerable thing to do. And then on the flip side, it's quite a responsibility to be the one guiding other people through a place where everything looks the same and you're the one who knows where you're going. And it's just another kind of layer to this whole feeling of isolation and the feeling that somebody's always watching you, and there's something always there off in the distance in the shadows that you can't really see. And is it really there, or is it just my imagination? And we're put in that position as an audience because of the way in which it's filmed. And I don't know. It's one of these things. I think because they're students, it's difficult to tell. Was it just a case of they knew exactly how to do what they were trying to do, or was there a naivety with it where they were just like, we just stumbled upon this, this little lightning bolt, you know what I mean, in terms of putting this film together? Because there are some directors who probably are quite well established, probably couldn't capture the same the same feeling and the same essence that we have from, student filmmakers.
I honestly think that.
Sorry, when I say student filmmakers, I mean independent filmmakers. The student filmmakers are in the film, but the filmmakers were independent filmmakers.
But it's weird, right? Because obviously the actors filmed it themselves, which is quite interesting thing. I don't know that other examples of that really. I mean I think that's what happened. Do you know this, right? And I think how they did it is they actually set them up in the woods and would leave them food and stuff, and then would like mess around with them at night and stuff. Like
it feels very much like the like ultimate improvised play that a lot of students do in, when they experiment with, okay, well, here's your character, here's what you're going to think, but you're not knowing, you're not going to know where this is going to end up. You just have to improvise and go with it. And, there's some ethical dilemmas there, leaving 3 young performers in the woods and say, well, tomorrow we're not going to give them as much food just to make them a bit more aggy. But it's totally 100% worked. The fact of even the thing of when they were crossing or one of the times that they're crossing the stream or the river and going across the log, and they end up circling back and coming back to that same place. That was genuine. They genuinely got lost and genuinely just essentially walked in a circle. And it's like that's what I mean about like capturing that lightning in a bottle and being totally lucky with it, because you could set that up and you could probably make it look pretty real, but the fact that it just happened and it was just organic is something that's, I sort of fall either side of the fence as I watch this film. Is it masterful filmmaking or is it naive filmmaking? Either way, the result's the same.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? It's that thing of going, have they planned that? And have they just, meticulously planned these things to all fall into this particular way of telling that story? Or is it just a case of they've gone, let's just try this and see what happens? And then they've just been lucky with it.
But I think that's, like every film that all our favourite directors, they never really set out to make something rubbish. Like, and I bet most of them would agree that it's a bit of a roll of a dice. And I think this one, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the people involved aren't really good at what they do just because they got lucky or whatever. It's like, for me, this is just such a, it's cool, isn't it? Because I bet this inspired so many like amateur filmmakers, as all movies do, right? But I bet this one was like, right, you can get that Sony Handycam, or whatever Handycam they're using. Probably did cost a fair sum back then, to be fair, the one she's got. But people's dads had that at weddings.
So graduations and everything.
Yeah, like skate videos around that time. That there's all these, and there's 2 cameras in this movie. There's the one she's sort of taken as her personal one, and then there's like the more like serious film one. Oh, I just had deja vu watching this, Ryan. God, that's really weirded me out. We're watching in the background. It's just come up the bit where she said, "Oh, the flames licking your face like the devil or something." When it's sort of when the flames come up in front of his face. Anyway, there's 2 cameras in this movie, and it's I think that's a clever thing they did in a way that they had given them 2 cameras, and the fact they're different ones sort of cuts it up a bit. Like if they were 2 of the same like ones, it would have felt more amateur-y. I think the fact you got that sort of slightly more serious one for like the more documentary moments, or when they want to capture something really important. There's all little decisions that all seem to work, and then there's you hear like little mistakes, so they missed filming something and they didn't have it, but that seemed to end up helping the movie. When it all comes down to it, and when I watched a video about it afterwards, I was like, right, ending explained. Go on, someone tell me about the ending. I watched a video and they added some of those clips at the beginning, like the talking heads, when they give some lore background at the beginning. It got different people from the village, and they added some of those because in the cinema, I think people didn't necessarily, they were scared, but they didn't necessarily know what was happening. So I think some of the things are added afterwards, but And the one, I guess the one that sort of maybe explains away a bit too much for my liking, if there's any like thing that pokes out of this movie, is, you know, spoiler alert, you've had the spoiler warning, but here it is. You know, at the end, Mikey's looking in the corner of the wall, you know, in that house. He's in the corner facing sort of downwards. And there's a foreshadowing bit, or right at the beginning, one of these talking heads, and they're like, "Oh yeah, the killer, he used to make one kid face the wall while he killed the other one, and then he could kill the other one. He didn't like the people to look at him doing it." And I was like, that's probably the only thing for me that maybe explains it away a bit too much. I mean, it still doesn't explain necessarily what's happening. You could still have all these theories that they're killing her because, you know, he could be looking in the wall. The other dude might not be dead and he could have killed her right at the end. That could have been the plan. You know, it could be a witch, could be the crazy villagers. It could be a Wicker Man scenario or a Hot Fuzz scenario. Because there's one lady that really is dodgy, isn't there?
Yeah, the one who, if you were to imagine what the Blair Witch might look like, is very close to that. And I think going back to what you're saying about the two different cameras, I think it's a really, really shrewd move, because it subtly tells the audience when the characters are creating a movie. Obviously, everything is being filmed, and part of it is more about them documenting their journey. But when it goes to that black and white, and actually having it as black and white as well, is another little, sign that, okay, this is where they're starting to make the movie. And why I think the ending works so well is because by that point, those two things have started to kind of blur, started to become, well, hang on a minute, are they filming? Are they trying to create a film now, or are they just, you don't quite know. It's, it's less clear at that point. And that, that's a really, really inventive way of subtly telling an audience, here's what's happening. Here's everything in this particular lens, quite literally in this lens. Here's everything in this lens. And now we're going to kind of slowly start to blur the lines between them. I think it's a really inventive way of doing that.
Yeah, I think there's one bit in particular, isn't there? Like when they come across all these weird, like wickery looking stick figures in the forest. And she's like, get the camera out, get the camera. What the hell's this? And they're like, I guess as well there you see the passion that they actually had good intentions. They wanted to make the film.
Yeah.
Like they wanted to, they still, I know she's more into it than the others, but they're kind of on board with the vision of what she had, I think. That's why they're all doing it. It just turns out that, one of those finger marks either side, whatever you call them, apostrophe, it turns out it's real, or something dodgy is going on.
There's more than meets the eye at the very least, isn't there?
Yeah, and so my impressions at the beginning, I love her. From the beginning, I thought, wow, Mikey's a bit of a grump, isn't he? And I like the relationship with the other dude. Is it Josh, yeah, Stu. It's Josh. And I was like, okay, I sort of see where this is going. And then you sort of end up really coming round to Mikey, I think. Do you? Like, because he starts to lose his shit quite early.
It's interesting because I think he's the one who seems like the most of the three. He seems like the dickhead out of the three. He seems like he perhaps isn't taking things seriously, is a little bit kind of, as you say, a bit of a grump. And I like the fact that he loses his shit first, because before these things became cliche, at that point you're going, well, of course, okay, well, mate, he's just overreacting a little bit. Okay, they're lost, but nothing really weird has happened. He's just overreacting a little bit, and he's being a bit harsh on Heather, and that feeds in very, very nicely to when it gets to the point where kind of Josh is the last one to kind of lose his shit and be like proper, like, what's going on. Obviously there's that moment where he's off on his own and he's obviously crying, and Mikey is like saying, like, you really going to go over and film him? That's like the last thing that he needs right now, and I think we get to a point with Heather where we're actually like, okay, you need to put the camera down now. Like, you're still trying to make a film, and at this point, you need to start thinking about getting out of the woods. And I think that's where the friction, perhaps, it comes across the most. Is, you know, she's there still trying to make this film, and I suppose that's perhaps why you question more so than perhaps you would do if she was very much, okay, yeah, you're right, and let's stop making the film. It's perhaps why you question, are we being shown everything, or is it going to end with an elaborate prank, and, you know, Heather was the one orchestrating it all, because she seems the most intelligent of the three. Not that the other two are, you know, dumb or anything like that, but she seems the one who knows the law, knows the folklore, seems to be the driving force behind it. And the others, for the most part, are followers on it. They're not followers in the sense of they don't know what they're doing, but they're followers in the sense of, if Heather's vision is kind of impaired, okay, what are we doing here?
I get. If I'm on the sort of canon side of my interpretation of this movie is still they're haunted, right? I believe there's a Blair Witch or something. They're in a weird time warp thing. You know, everything's a bit weird. The second thing I might believe is it would take me a lot of convincing, but I could see the theory that they might be planning to kill her, because there's some questionable things come from them. But, you know, it's that thing in it, because you're like, oh, that's what's so good, because anything that you think, oh, that seems a bit of an overacting, like, like, oh, that seems a bit over the top, that bit they kept in there of Mikey a bit early on, like, why is he losing his mind so much? But it's like, well, if his plan is to kill Heather, he might be losing his mind. But I'm gonna sit on the canon thing, the fence. I think for me it's haunted. And Heather, what I think she's so greatly doing is, when you go camping with someone or go to a festival with someone, if they've got a problem, you don't necessarily see it on the first day. And we've all been there. You know, if someone's got something up with them, like, by the end of like a few days, like, it comes out, and whether or not they face it or not, they've pissed everyone off. And I think what she's doing, she's going through something. Like, I think that she's clearly like, she's determined to do this project, Blair Witch Project, at all cost, and she kind of lives in the camera, and it's like a sort of, and lucky for us, because otherwise we wouldn't see it. but
Yeah, it'd be a short film, wouldn't it?
But it's greatly done, because I just think that for me, it just feels like you get to see her sort of. It feels like you see something quite complex with her. I think, like a real human thing of like someone not like what they do call it out at one point, like she's not living in reality.
Yeah, she even calls it out. Well, no, doesn't call it out herself, but she kind of explains or justifies it in some ways in that moment where they are challenging her, saying, "Why are you still doing this? Like, it's not real. It's you're living through the lens or whatever it may be." And she's like, "Well, it's all I have right now." And it is that, I think it's her, it's her coping mechanism. If it's on the camera and I'm looking through the camera, it's not actually really in front of me. And obviously that's such a warped and fucked up kind of approach. But I think it is that whole isolation and the whole kind of feeling that is created is that, how quickly would your mind start to go? How quickly would you start to, as you say, when when you've traveled or you go anywhere where there's high elements of stress, that one thing that person does that usually you can go, oh, it's fine, that's just who they are, suddenly is like the worst thing in the world, and that becomes the problem. As I say, with me and Hannah, we do it. We've done it on numerous occasions where she's a bit more of a free spirit, and we'll be traveling somewhere and she kind of go, I think it's this way. And when she says, I think it's this way, that's like the worst thing in the world for me, because I'm like, now hang on, you said you know where you were going. Think isn't knowing, and that becomes, in this situation, it would just be, we'd be at loggerheads. And it's a tense situation even without all of that, that creepy shit and the whole, myth and the lore behind the Blair Witch, put that on top of it, and it automatically is just elevated and, exasperated.
What do you think, Ryan, about her character? Because it made me think something like, which I thought before quite recently in my head. I've been it's more obvious now these days as well. I will get to it in a minute. The point, by the way, it's way more obvious these days. Yeah, it's coming out a lot more. What is it? But it happened at a Darkness gig. Went to see the Darkness, and a guy was standing at the front. Well, yeah, Justin Hawkins, the singer of the Darkness, he stopped the gig for a bit. Think of that as you will. Like I never judge anyone who's performing. They're just doing the thing. And he stopped the song. And he's like, "Hold on a minute," and then he goes, "Give me that," and this guy passed him his phone that he was filming him on, and then he did an impression of like what it looked like to be filmed by someone at the front. He was like, did an impression of someone like sort of leaning back filming, and the face they pull you can't really do the face through sound, can you? Anyway, and then he's like, "Why don't you just watch the gig, or don't film me right at the front," sort of thing. And then they carried on playing, and then because we started to grow up when phones started coming out and the cameras got better and better and better. But at one point, I'd film everything. I'd put all my photos up on Facebook from like a weekend out, or, go on a night out and put my drunk photos out. And then it's like nowadays, everyone's got cameras in their phones. Everyone's filming stuff at gigs, but I feel like people are a bit more aware of it. But what are we even filming it for? Is it to show us? Is it for us to look back in the future? Because what I get when I look at what I get is storage alerts. You're about to run out of storage. What are we actually filming it for? And like her character is something I think we can all relate to at the moment. Is like, what are we doing? Are we recording history for future generations? Because if we're all doing it, it's going to be too much. Do you know what I mean?
It's sifting through, piles and piles of shit of people going, "Oh, this is what it's like to this." I'm just going into Boots now.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you what you can get in Boots on the Boots meal deal. Who wants to see that shit? Somebody might.
That'd be more interesting than 100 people filming the Oasis gig.
Well, this is the thing. Like,
1,000
it's
people.
a really interesting thing. Like, and I can always remember. Ironically, I was watching a video of somebody filming it. So take that with what you will. But one of my favourite bands, Alexis on Fire, the lead singer from that, Dallas Green. I was there. I do apologise. He was supporting for Biffy Clyro, and he basically said at this point, he said, "Okay, what I want you to do is I just want you to put your phones away." And he used this phrase, which I think is such a on the money phrase. He says, "Everybody's spending far too much time trying to remember something that they forget to experience it." And it's you're totally right. Obviously, I'm coming off of a lifetime trip to Manchester to see Old Trafford, and I said to Hannah, "If you can take photos, I just want to kind of experience it and just take it all in." And I think, that's a really sort of really great thing to be able to do, because now I can, that memory is mine. Nobody can take that away from me. I can lose that video if my phone gets broken or whatever it may be, but that memory is there. And similarly, what I was saying earlier about stressful situations. Obviously, we had a delayed train back, and we walked into London Euston, and it was absolutely manic in there. And Hannah, bless her, she lifted her phone up and started filming just to show the carnage and how many people were there. And I immediately, because there were so many people there and it was busy, I immediately went, "Yeah, stop filming it. That's the problem. It's not that everybody's here waiting for trains. It's knobheads like you filming it." And she was like, "Oh God, all right." And then 5 minutes later, I was like, "I'm really sorry about that. I think it's just the whole thing of being stressed."
Yeah.
And
you were Blair Witch at that point. You were Mikey.
It's literally that. Yeah, I was Mikey in that situation. It's that thing of like this,
You was Heather.
that thing annoyed me because I just wanted to get home. And like here, I don't think he actually does hate the fact that she's filming everything and that
No.
her first instinct is to grab the camera. I think it's a way of, diverting the responsibility onto somebody else. It's a way of him going, you know what? It's not my problem. It's not my fault, And I think, Heather does the same thing with the map. Oh, it's not my fault that we're lost because he stole the map, you know. Josh is the only one who I think is like the level-headed one. I think you start out thinking Heather is quite level-headed, and then you realise, oh, perhaps she's a bit clouded. Perhaps she's so focused on this movie she can't see anything else. And then Josh is probably he's like the happy medium between the two.
I find that she is the one that I would trust the most, to be honest. Even when she didn't really know where she was going, I feel like she, even if the plot is that she's being tricked or something, or their compass is messed up because the camera magnets, or they're in a time warp and the compass is telling them to go in circles, or if they're planning to kill her, I generally believe that she feels like she's doing the right, like, it's like, I'm pretty sure it's this way. Like, most of the time, I'm pretty sure she believes it. And then towards the end, I feel like she does sort of she goes, yeah, I promise, because she wants to hold the group together. I also know people like that. You lie to not offend or ruin the situation. Do you know what I mean? You just sort of, God,
you try to be everything to everybody, don't you?
Yeah, and it's like, I get that too. I feel like, with the lost footage stuff and found stuff, I mean, there's something to be said about Hannah even filming that station as well, because I guess that's the question, isn't it? Like, who are we filming stuff for? And it's like, they're telling her not to film it, but then this is if she didn't film all this, if we're living in their world for a minute, like, she does her apology. She sort of says, I'm really sorry to the mums of Josh and oh my God, sorry, Ryan.
And Mikey,
and my mum as well, because I've brought them out here, and I was
your mum, Simon,
and I was so certain of everything, and I'm sorry to bring people here. I feel I'm going to die here, and then I didn't realise that's been a parodied scene where she has a nose running.
Yeah, that's in Scary Movie or Scary Movie 2. I think it might be Scary Movie 2. And it's very difficult. We spoke about this on the Scream episode way back when, just over 2 years ago which our first episode was released on Scream. But we spoke about in that episode that sometimes it's so like that scene, I was immediately taken out of it because of how well it's parodied in Scary Movie. I'm immediately just like trying not to laugh because I know it's not that film, but I think that's a sign of a great parody.
And yeah, if they didn't, if she didn't film this stuff, like, we wouldn't have their last memory, or all the mystery, the true story of what, there is haunting, or there was something going on. And I think, like, to me, this film raises that question that I've been thinking a lot recently, because it's like, you could ask yourself, why are we recording this? And we've spoken about that before. It's like, is the most important thing about something these days that you record it to get like a number of likes that go up on it online, or a best-selling thing, or is it like a documentation of life? To me, that's probably the biggest question this thing brings up for me, I think.
And that's the sort of more sort of philosophical thing of any type of filming, recording of anything, isn't it? Where you kind of go, well, yeah, like you can really deep in go, who am I making this for? And that can certainly make you go, oh yeah, why am I doing this? Why are we doing a podcast? Why are we recording? And it's, for me, it's always been that thing of, one, I enjoy it, so there's that element, but also somebody somewhere might, just hold on to something that we say, something that we, content that we put out there. Somebody may look at that and go, do you know what? That's a good piece of content, or I really like what that guy said. I really like what, Simon and Ryan said on that podcast. And in this instance, I think for Heather, she's probably going, well, when we get out of this, because I think there is that element, you're always going, I was doing it yesterday on the train back. We're going in an hour's time. I'm going to be going. Oh, that was a long journey, wasn't it? Because I'm going to be home, and obviously there was no peril and no danger
You
in
could have
that
been on that train for
situation.
longer.
Exactly. And there was definitely points in that train journey where I was like, "Oh, it's all right. We'll be at London Euston in 20 minutes," and then an hour goes past, and I go, "Oh yeah, I thought that like an hour ago, didn't I?" That you know what I mean? But here it's that thing of always telling yourself, "We're going to be all right. It's all going to be okay. We're gonna go through these woods, and we're going to go through these trees, and we're going to get to the main road, and it's all going to be okay." And I think there's that element that it's not always necessarily voiced in this movie, but there is that psychological thing of telling yourself where so we're all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. And actually, there is that moment where she's saying, "Okay, might not be okay. I need to apologise for that because it's partly my fault." And that's where there's that realisation, and that's probably the point where, again, another signal to the audience that okay, now we get into the climax. We get into the what actually happened to these kids. And I think it's a really human film. Like it on the face of it, it's just a horror film. It's just a shaky cam film. But there's a reason why we're watching it 25, 26 years later and going, yeah, that was actually a really decent movie, and we can see why so many people copied it, parodied it, knocked it off, because it is very, very good. It's really strange when you watch something when it's been done so many times, and you kind of go, oh yeah, that actually is like, the highest quality or one of the highest quality films in that genre. Yeah, and I can see why people done it.
Yeah, for sure. I think what really helps this is that there's, I've seen Cloverfield. That's one of them, and a
Yeah,
sort of
that's
shaky
one.
cam
Yeah.
movie, and I remember quite liking it. But at the same time, and I might be wrong because there might be a lot of cool Cloverfield stuff out there. But I think why it really works for this is, I mean, in Cloverfield you see the stuff, you see the big monster things or whatever it is. But I think why it works in this is because it sort of taps into sort of, it's probably a cool way of doing this with that sort of thing, but, aliens and stuff. But I think this sort of taps into a sort of, the fact that myths long gone are still around, oh, that house up the top of there's haunted. We've got one, haven't we? Like High Down Hill. If you near us on the South Downs, there's High Down Hill, and there's the Miller's Tomb at the top. It sounds like this sounds fake now because of how fake this is.
You're not going to pitch me going and camping up there, are you, Simon, with the camera?
At the top of there's the Miller's Tomb, and he's got some weird. I've got it all on my phone actually. Someone sent it to me. He's got some really weird engravings on there. He was an interesting guy, right? He had there was, he used to do smuggling and stuff. It was always stories of smuggling. There's old stories people used to say if you walk like anti-clockwise 8 times around the miller's garden or tomb or whatever, he rises, his bald head comes out. So it's like, these are the things give you nightmares. And there's something, that it's very, the fact that it's on found footage and and this footage could have just been lost to just got wet or something, and it's been dug, it's been found a year later, and I just think it all plays into the sort of, I know it's all folk tales and stuff, but I think why this found footage stuff really works in this specific genre is it all lines up, doesn't it? I guess if we took a little camera up and camped by the Miller's Tomb, I promise you we'd have quite a fun video. It would be good.
Yeah, and there's an element of it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you go to a place at night and you're looking for scary stuff to happen, scary stuff will probably happen because you're looking for it. That noise of I don't know, a fox stepping on a branch is all of a sudden, that's not a fox stepping on a branch, it's an axe wielding murderer stepping on a branch and he's coming to get you.
Yeah.
as you say, in 2025, if we done this, the footage would look much better because technology has moved on. But the reason why it works so well is because that's how it would have looked. It was 100% authentic. And the reason why the marketing obviously actually worked is because it was believable. Like, if there were to be kids going and making a student film about an urban legend, a folklore tale, a tale that you tell your kids or your grandkids to scare them and make them behave. If they were going to go and make a film about this in the middle of the woods, how would it look? And it would look exactly like this. Exactly like this, you know, especially if these kids got lost, especially if these were the young, naive kids. All of the things line up, as you say, and fit perfectly. This is probably about as close to a perfect found footage film you're going to get. You know, obviously, one of the reasons why found footage took off more than anything is more of a practical reason, because it's really easily done. You know, this makes the genre look so easily done that you think anybody can do it. And whilst it may look the same, the actual meat on the bone and the thing that makes you return to the film and the thing that makes it resonate with the audience are all the things that are a lot harder to do. But the reason why is because it was cheap. And so everybody was hoping that they could do, you know, a found footage movie and on next to nothing and make $245 million. Everybody was hoping that they could do that. And obviously, not everybody could.
What is quite funny, Ryan, and I will let you into a secret. So obviously I'm in a band called Absuma, and
Oh my God, is that Simon from Absuma?
and from doing music and stuff and having to do it, like the last band was in Glue. They actually did a music video in the forest. It was really hilarious. I think they deleted it because it was a bit weird, but you know, you see, so when you do like music video stuff, you end up you don't necessarily want to, but you end up having to put on little hats and like, okay, I'm going to try and make a video, and then before you know it, in your YouTube wormhole, and you think you're a director. So I got a camera like this. I hadn't even seen this film, but I got this Sony Handycam, and you know, I've made a music video on it, and I even thought I had this original idea. It's so dumb now, but I was like, right, I've got a new camera and I've got an old camera. So my idea for one of these music videos that I've not done it, put it out yet, was to siren. I think that might come through. The idea was to every time I'll be singing this song, and I'll only appear in, because I need to film the video, I'll only appear in the shots when it's the Handycam, the old camera, and not the new camera. So I'll be like a ghost appearing in the old camera only.
Yeah.
And then when they put that camera down, I won't be there in this like new crystal clear footage. And then it's funny because somewhere in the ether, that's, you know, that ain't original. But now when I look on other bands' Instagrams and stuff, everyone's using this kind of camera, like this Sony Handycam, not the more top one, obviously. Everyone's using these like little Handycams again now in like 20, you know, a lot, generally millennials. I don't think Gen Z are messing around with it. It's this nostalgia look they have. They all look like our home videos. And you know, I wonder if this would even work on a Gen Z person, someone that didn't grow up with looking at what these cameras look like. Do you know what I mean? I wonder what it would be like to someone that just didn't grow up with this kind of medium. Because all my videos of being a kid look like this. Do you? Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was funny because my family didn't really do like handheld, you know, family videos and stuff like that. But obviously, this is exactly what it would look like. You know, it's such a distinctive look, isn't it? Like, and as you, I wonder how much of a Gen Z or someone new to this movie wasn't aware of how it actually looked back then. If they would buy it, if they would think, oh, this looks hokey, this looks fake. And I think that's the beauty of it is, in 100 years' time, if somebody comes back and watches Blair Witch, they will not probably know how accurate it was. Or even they could come back to it and go, look at this. You know, if let's say all of our art and culture is suddenly wiped off the face of the earth in some horrific thing, in 150, 200 years' time, if somebody was to just find the Blair Witch Project, would they think it was real? Would they think it was something that actually happened?
That's the plot from one of my favourite sort of jokey sci-fi movies, the one with Tim Allen in it. Do you know the one? Galaxy Quest.
Galaxy Quest.
I love that
yeah.
film.
Yeah.
I do like that film.
I do like that film.
I think there's something very funny about that movie. It's a good one. But yeah, the aliens in that, if you've not seen it, you should watch it. They come down and is it Tim Allen?
Tim Allen,
he is like he's like the Captain Kirk. He's an actor in the sort of Star Trek equivalent of the universe they're in. It's Earth, but just a movie version of, a fake version of a Star Trek. And then they come down and they think he's a real pilot, and they recruit him to be in their mission to fight off some really seriously bad aliens. They recreated his spaceship and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, that film has a sort of a soft spot in my heart for some reason. But yeah, no, totally. I mean, this looks like there's a documentary series. It's really dark, but it inspired a load of stuff. It's about these kids that were murdered, and Tom Latham showed me it. You've probably seen it. And it's got Metallica music in it. Have you seen that?
Oh, is it the Westbrook 3 or something?
Yeah, but the movie's got a name. I will find it before we end this podcast. But the tone of those talking heads at the beginning is very much like this. And I'm really not surprised people thought it was. What's bonkers is the real life one of that, which I will find the name. The talking head cutaways, they're even more crazy than the movie ones.
Yeah. It's almost the thing of, if you made a film about the real talking head type things we see in documentaries, the first thing people would say is, "Oh, well, that's ridiculous. That would never happen. That's totally unbelievable." But then you put it in a documentary format and you find out it's real. It's like, oh yeah, the world is a crazy, fucked up place.
Paradise Lost.
I think is that about the Westfield?
It's West Memphis.
Yeah, the West Memphis 3.
Yeah.
So there's a film called The Devil's Knot, which is a dramatisation of it. But for anybody listening who doesn't know that, essentially it's about these 3 kids who were accused of and went to prison and convicted of murdering this kid. And it turns out they didn't do it.
No, they didn't do it.
But it is that thing of people who look a bit different, who act a little bit differently, how easy it is to just believe they can do horrible things because
they got long hair.
You already think they're weird. That is a really good. There's a documentary on it as well. I think, that Paradise Lost. It is a good documentary.
It's weird. So I don't often watch stuff like that, to be honest with you. And Tom Latham, our mutual friend, showed me it, and I'm not true. I'll tell you this: I'm not a true crime person. I'm not super obsessed with serial killers. Some people are super obsessed with serial. I've seen a fair. You know what it is, actually? I've seen a fair few of them. I got quite into the sort of adaptations and documentaries about the Charles Manson thing. The Paradise Lost, I watched the whole thing. I don't know if it's a movie or like a 3-part series or something, but it was really fascinating and someone showed me it. But generally, I've also come out of horror. I used to love horror movies like all the time, but I've just, for whatever reason, the dark stuff. This film, to be honest with everyone, it scared me. I was sitting there and I was like, I'm actually feeling quite tense. And I forgot, that's why, it's great when a film actually has that effect on you. It means it's working.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a horror movie, I think the thing about this that makes it great is that you're spending the whole time waiting for that jump scare. And that is scarier than the jump scare. And the jump scare never happens, which I love as well. I've said it numerous times and I'll say it again. I think a jump scare is the easy way out. It's very easy. They can be well done, don't get me wrong. But generally speaking, a jump scare, I've scared Hannah numerous times just by her not knowing I'm behind her. There's no skill involved there. It's just something where if you're not expecting it, it's going to make you jump. Here, the skill is going and having that constant kind of knot in your stomach and that constant kind of looking away, not really wanting to watch it because you think a jump scare's coming and it never quite gets there, is really, really tense. It's a really kind of it's a brave thing to do as well, because it's almost like the film itself, where you don't get that satisfying conclusion. You never get that point where you can go, oh, I can breathe now. I can breathe now because the jump scare's happened. You never get that moment, and I think that's the beauty of it. Another film that does that really well is a film called Session 9, which is kind of to the extreme, where even more you feel like a jump scare's coming and it never quite gets to that point.
It almost, with this thing, it's a weird, long, drawn out feeling, because you don't want night to come for them. It's like, because, video games have tapped into this, like Minecraft. Like, Minecraft is massive, and it's like set over this day-night cycle. Like every time it's night, more worse villains come up, so you better make a little bunker and house down every night, shut the doors. And it's this thing of like, you're not, a tent isn't going to keep you safe. And, any lights you put on, some of the sounds are quite scary in this, and they don't really overdo it with the sounds. Like at the beginning, it just sounds like sticks. And then you sort of get some, like, when you start getting kids, you're verging on the territory for me, when you're like, oh, yeah. Like, for some reason, one thing I don't really like is scary kids. Not, I'm super fearful of them. I just like, oh, you done that one. But I know there's only, but I'm never at the point where I was like, I was always quite, I was really immersed in this film, to be honest. And I think, like, I really did want him to get out, and I'm also glad, because I don't like, since not being super into horror, this is enough for me. That like, one night I stayed up when I watched the beginning of Wolf Creek when I was young with my brother.
Yeah, Wolf Creek.
And then he went to bed, and it was all fun and games up to when he went to bed. It's a bit like this, like you said, it takes a while, and it's similar sort of pace maybe. Although it feels like they're just having fun for ages. And then my brother went to bed, and I was like, what is happening? And that, that's probably that one's too bleak for me, I think. And
it's interesting, because I have not a similar story, but so I suppose a somewhat similar story. So Wolf Creek was a film I remember my sister saying, I watched that, and it just really stuck with me. And so for years I was going, Wolf Creek, it must be really scary. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, okay. Didn't really. And I think it's that thing with horror movies where sometimes you don't even need to know why. You don't even need to it doesn't need to necessarily be very well done. Sometimes something is just creepy or just scary, and it just kind of sticks with you, and you don't know why. My one for years and years and years was Jeepers Creepers, where it just, again, I watched it far too young, and it's not a particularly great horror movie. I mean, it's all right, but it's not, it's certainly not the scariest movie ever made. But literally, I watched that when my sister rented it from Blockbusters. We watched it together, and that was when it first came out. So that was 2001. So I'd have been 9, and I didn't rewatch that movie until I was about 28, just because I was like, I can't watch that movie. And then I watched it, and I was like, oh, I can watch this movie. It's not the movie that was scary. It was everything else that was scary about it. It was the fact I was 9.
You had to go to bed afterwards.
It was the fact that I had to go to bed afterwards.
Yeah.
It was the fact that I was watching it with my sister, and Mum and Dad didn't know we were watching it. It's that kind of thing where all of the other things make it kind of scary. It's not necessarily the film itself. Here, it's almost everything going on outside, like the fact of, for a lot of people, or certainly a good chunk of the audience, thought it was real. When you think something's real, it's automatically a bit scarier. That's why a lot of movies say this movie is based on true events, and what that essentially means is somebody told a story once that was kind of similar,
and they're all based on the same one.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
And it's Chinese.
Based on the same.
It's Chinese whispers, isn't it?
Yeah.
Somebody adds something to it. Somebody adds it's like in school, if somebody, why were they off ill? They didn't feel very well. By the end of the day, they had diarrhea and they shat themselves in science class because somebody adds something to it immediately. And it's that thing here where, have you seen that Blair Witch movie? No, I haven't. It's the scariest thing. You watch it. and then you tell your friend about, the bit with this, and then it fuels it and just goes and goes and goes and gets to a point where the film itself has this whole mythos and mythology before you've even watched it.
I think this is quite a good, maybe not actually. I was going to say this is a good entry point into like the horror genre for people, like young people, but I don't know if any way is a good entry point. You know, it's all still about brutal murders and stuff like that. You know, I think I do just, you know, I think these sort of more simple ones that you can always come back to, and when they're not super over the top, but there's always going to be, I think people will just always be coming back to it, not just for the impact it had at the time, just because it is just really good, I think. You know what I mean? I think like there's something. What did did the directors go on to do anything else of note, out of curiosity?
No,
or
I
like
mean
just add to this
they
universe?
have some other credits, but nothing to the same, you know, to the same success. So it was co-directed, co-written, and co-edited by Daniel Myrick, Eduardo Sanchez, and Neil Fredericks, and essentially this was their biggest movie by far. I think Daniel Myrick went on to direct Solstice in 2007, Believers, The Objective, and Skyman in 2019, but nothing really ever touched the kind of success that this film did, and it's kind of the same across the board, really. I mean, Michael Manello, who's a co-producer of the film, ended up doing some UFC early shorts, so
Fair.
completely different.
Yeah, fair. And then the actors, like I saw that she was in Taken or something, but I don't recognise.
Yeah, it's not that Taken. It was a mini series from 2002.
Okay, fair.
Yeah,
I feel like she just feels like she could have blown up to me as like maybe all of them, but she just seems like, I think she's absolutely great in this, to be honest. I don't think that's a fluke. Do you know what I mean? I think she could have been like final girl in loads of horror films.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the reasons why I ended up picking this movie for the first movie in our horror month of October is because I've seen quite a lot on Twitter recently. Obviously, there's so much fake shit on Twitter and that kind of thing. But one of the things I saw was a picture of these three, and it says, "Let's take a moment to remember the victims of the Blair Witch." But it was like presented like a factual thing.
Wow, okay.
And it's like going into that thing of like, obviously, yeah, so we obviously know about it, but there will be people who don't know about it who will probably read that post and be like, fuck.
It's
Oh
still
my
gonna
God, there's,
work.
you know,
Yeah.
they can have a whole new marketing thing for it all
Yeah.
over again, because there's always going to be a new audience for it, particularly even easier now with social media, things that weren't, you know, around then. You know, I think one of the things they did, which they had to stop, but when it was premiered at might have been Cannes Film Festival. It's certainly a film festival. Let me just try and find which one it was. Of course, I can't find it at all, which is really, really helpful. Yeah, I can't find it. But they premiered this at a film festival, and they posted all over the area missing persons like posters. They had to take it down because apparently a producer of another movie went missing that same weekend.
Oh god.
So it's like art imitating life a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's those things where it's like all it takes is just a little bit of a different way of marketing something and different way of doing something where all of a sudden it kind of picks up a bit more steam than perhaps it usually would, you know. And this is for a lot of movies, this is kind of the originator of that style of marketing, where before the film's even released, there's a myth about it, there's an urban legend about it.
Well, did they make documentaries about? I swear they made like a documentary. Or
Yeah,
something.
I think they did.
That.
Yeah, I think they did, and
because that's clever.
Yeah, it's obviously. I mean, this film had a sequel. So the Blair Witch Project 2, which was subtitled, what was it subtitled? Curse of the Blair Witch, sorry, I think is what it was called.
It did, as people didn't really like it.
Yeah, I've never seen the second one. They did a reboot, sequely reimagining one of those things that they've done with every film, and essentially it was the same film, just not quite well it's done. I think part of the problem with it is it's shot with cameras of today.
Yeah.
So it looks too nice. It looks too, and then they tried to put too much into it. I think the shot we're watching at the moment is the shot that is on the cover and is that shot that's parodied. But for so long before prior to seeing this movie, because even when I did watch it, it was a thing of, I remember there being a long period of seeing this cover, so even when I, prior to when I saw it when I was 10, there was I can remember it being this like big thing of like that's that movie, and it is the fact. One of the things that I think really hits home for me, and it's not just because it's just happened on screen, is the fact that for a large portion of that shot, you see her looking off somewhere else. She looks at the camera to say a message, and she keeps looking off at something. And the fact that you don't know what she's looking at, but you can see her reaction to what she's looking at, or what she isn't looking at, is so much more powerful than if we'd A, have seen what she was looking at, or B, if it had just been, down the barrel of the lens the whole time.
I think that it was on a video saying that she didn't realize the camera zoomed in. Because those cameras, they have they just have this old zoom function that's really cool, actually. It zooms in quite far,
like a little
digital
rocker
zoom,
button, isn't it?
Yeah, and she didn't realise that it had zoomed in a bit, so the up the nose shot was not really.
And that's what I mean about the kind of, masterful filmmaking, naive filmmaking. It's kind of a mixture of the two. They've managed to capture this this organic, real kind of moments without necessarily meaning to in every kind of situation. I do just want to, because the Blu-ray copy that I have has 4 alternative endings.
Oh, nice.
They're not massively different, but essentially the original ending, spoiler alert, as anybody will know, is they go into that abandoned house and they see, is it Mikey or is it Josh? I think it's Mikey, isn't it?
Josh, you don't see again.
It's Mikey.
In the corner, yeah.
Mikey is looking into the corner, and for years and years and years, I thought he was shaking, but I think that may have been in a parody. I think that may have been in other things, or things that have done, that Blair Witch thing, but they've added to it. So he's just standing there staring into the corner, and it's quite an eerie image, and then she's knocked over. You don't really know how, and you just see, like I said, the camera continuing recording on virtually nothing. So the 4 different versions, 5 different versions of that. So the one is the original where he's just staring into the corner. There's another one where he's staring into the corner, but in the room are those like pagan, like wind chime type things that have been made out of twigs that we saw earlier in the film. So that's another kind of layer to it. Another one is, rather than facing the corner, he's facing into the center of the room, or essentially where Heather is filming. So he's looking not quite directly at the camera, but looking towards camera. There's another one where he's hanging from the ceiling and they've got those pagan ornament things. And then the final one is he's levitating and they've got those pagan kind of ornament things. And it's hard to know which one is the most impactful because they all tell a slightly different story.
Yeah.
It's all, and I can see why they went for the one they did go with, because it's the one that gives the least away. It's the one that tells the least.
I would say that it kind of links it in, though, to that bit they shoved in at the beginning.
Which is probably why they went that way.
So I wouldn't have minded more of an even more abstract one, I think.
Yeah.
But it is still pretty abstract, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the only one that perhaps didn't quite work is the levitating one.
Does it look good? Have they done it well?
It's not like, because on the DVD they named the endings, so I kind of knew what was coming before. It was called Alternative Ending 4, levitating.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew what was coming,
Yeah.
and I was expecting him to just be kind of like complete, almost like he's gone limp,
Yeah.
but he's not. It's almost like, and maybe this is just because I've been playing a lot of Tony Hawk's, but it's almost like he's like on a skateboard, but the skateboard isn't there.
Yeah, okay.
It's a weird kind of
sort of hoverboard.
Yeah,
like
it's a weird thing. So it kind of
Back to the
doesn't
Future.
quite work. I'd like the whole having the the wooden sort of like hanging things.
Yeah, make that.
I like that.
Yeah.
But as I say, it tells a different story, doesn't it? It kind of hints far more towards something, spiritual or supernatural is at play. Whereas I think this version is a little bit more, or you could easily go to that. Oh, well, maybe this is a Josh and
Yeah. So for me, levitation would mean clear possession. Blair Witch is possessing bodies. She can't kill people herself as a spirit that is possessing people to kill others. I think that's quite obvious. Not obvious, but that was my interpretation of that one. The one with more twigs and stuff in there makes me sort of think could be the village people. That lady that had the gate that looks like the Blair Witch gate. To me, that's like, maybe she's doing something. Maybe there's obviously other people in. Well, you see them a lot, but I'll probably be. I'm like, oh, maybe it's like, is that woman in the house, that scary lady or something? And then the hanging one, you can think of all sorts of things for that. Like, has Mikey killed himself? He can't go through with killing thingy. Has someone hung him? Or is he hung? I feel like has he been driven man, hung himself? And then there's the one of facing the set. I mean, what would that one tell you? Because that one I wouldn't really know. I wouldn't know what I'd think if I saw that one.
Well, I suppose that one would be the most pointing towards that Josh and Mikey are.
Oh, is he looking at her?
Kind of looking at.
So.
It's very difficult to tell because it is obviously quite grainy footage.
Yeah.
But it looks as though he's at the very least looking in her direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that one would probably be the one that would hint the most towards that Mikey and Josh have got this grand plan of luring her out to the woods just to kill her, and that's what it that's kind of what it says to me. But what I think the fact that there are five endings and each one tells a different story, and you can film the whole of that film and have 5 different endings, shows how much the imagination of the audience is the thing that makes the film scary more than what's necessarily there. Because it's the less is more approach, and some films do it well, some films don't, and this film is 100% a film that does do it well. The scariest moments are the moments where we're not seeing anything on screen. It's those black moments when we hear something and all of a sudden we imagine what they might be hearing, what it is that's making that noise.
Also, what really, I couldn't quite get my head around it when I was watching it until I rewound it a bit. The fact that the sound is coming from Mikey's camera or equipment, not the camera you're seeing at the end, is actually really disorientating. So I was like, wait, who's screaming? I was like, oh, it's her with the camera, but she's coming downstairs, so you hear it get louder, and she's letting out she's nailed the sort of screams for a horror movie, isn't she?
She firmly goes into that, probably an underrated scream queen. Everybody thinks of Jamie Lee Curtis, but Heather Donahue is certainly a scream queen in her own right.
And that bit's really disorientating. To be honest, there's a lot of rewatch value in this movie, I think, for these. I mean, what's your takeaway? I mean, are you a bit like me? And now I'm thinking about it, it does just seem like you could really watch this movie and just see it as they're luring her out to the woods to kill her for some weird reason. What do you think?
Well, I think that I don't have a definitive interpretation of it, and I think that's why I like it so much.
Yeah,
because as you say, there is that rewatch value. I can watch this. I think I probably have a different take on it than when I first watched it. I have a different take on it now that I've spoken to you about it. Not that I hadn't thought that they were luring her out there, but having that conversation, I've gone, oh, that could be actually that's a plausible explanation. The fact that could be the villagers, that's a plausible explanation. It's so open-ended that, to be fair, you can see why they've done a sequel. You can see why they've done a reboot, because there is so many unanswered questions. And unfortunately, those films are to the legacy of the Blair Witch's detriment. But it's because of how good this film was and how good this was at creating a buzz. Because this is at the end of the day, the reason it made 240 odd million worldwide on a $60,000 budget is because they just understood marketing in a different way to what the norm was. It wasn't just, okay, this is the scariest film you've ever seen. It wasn't that. It's like, no, this is real.
It's also, allows. It's not every so often as watching a film you get to have a brand new experience. But if you're watching something that's not real and you think it's real, that is a new experience. That is an experience you have every day, or maybe it is nowadays with like reels. Do you know what I mean? Or AI coming in. But they definitely beat all that to the to the post. I feel like there's something sort of part of this movie feels like not just the standard chasing, like, put out a good heartfelt film or whatever. It feels like a bit of an art project, doesn't it? It feels like, and it has that energy to it, really. And I think, it is cool that, anyone really could have made this, but they made it and they made this. It feels like, God, what a great idea. But you can only really do it once.
Yeah. And that this is kind of proof of that, because how many times has it been done? Has it been done better? No.
I don't think so.
I always use Halloween as an example. Halloween was probably one of the first real slashers, and it's been done better since. But has there been a better found footage film than the Blair Witch Project? Probably not.
What would you say are the other ones? I mean, is it the...
Well, I think that brings us quite nicely on to further watching. I think perhaps the biggest one is Paranormal Activity, which has spawned, I think, 5, maybe 6 sequels. And that, I think that one is a very good found footage film. But I think all the things that I like about this film, that does the opposite. You see far too much. You see far too, subtlety isn't a thing in that movie. It's very much, what you see is very over the top. This doesn't feel authentic at all. You're watching a movie.
Yeah.
Another one which is kind of like a 2020 or a modern take on the found footage genre is a film called Missing, which it's about a father whose daughter goes missing, but it's all done through the screen of a computer. So, he's on he'll be on a web call saying, "Oh, have you seen such and such?" "Oh, no, I haven't seen him." And then he'll start Googling, the address of the person she was meeting. And you see it all on a computer screen. Very similar to Unfriend, which is it Unfriend? Unfriended, sorry, which is like a supernatural take on that as well, where there's this computer virus which is actually a supernatural being and kills people.
Okay, fair.
So, but I think perhaps the closest film to this is something called the Poughkeepsie Tapes, which is a film I haven't seen, but I've wanted to see because it has that same kind of buzz about it, where people think it's real, or I think it's based on a real
fair.
A real urban legend, unlike the Blair Witch Project, but people thought it was based on a real one. Or maybe it isn't based on a real one, and I've just, again, fallen for the marketing. But that is one that I would recommend only because I haven't seen it, and I kind of want to go and watch it after watching this.
I've seen something about that. I think you're right. I would like to watch that one as well.
So I think that brings us on nicely to a rounded off way of ending the episode, and what I started in our last episode on Batman. Rather than doing a rating, rather than doing a arbitrary rating, I'm going to ask you a question in line with why we call the podcast Bury Our Bones with Cinema.
Okay.
So would you bury your bones with the Blair Witch Project? Is it a film that is ingrained in what you love about movies?
I wouldn't want it down there with me.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the film that,
I'm
would
going down
give
with
you
Chitty
comfort.
Chitty Bang Bang and all that stuff.
Yeah, you want nice things, but...
Yeah, I would have it in the... if I could take with my bones down to hell, wherever I go, I would have this in the rental store, yeah. So there'd be like the devil going, would you like to rent a movie? You know,
have you got the Blair Witch Project?
Yeah.
I've heard that's a good one.
Yeah, I would take it. Yes, I am... yes, I guess the answer is yes. What about you?
Yeah, I would bury my bones with the Blair Witch Project. I think it's a film which inspired many.
Yeah.
It's a film which redefined the horror genre. And I love horror. And it's 100% a film that I will rewatch over and over again.
Can I tell you one thing before we leave?
Of course.
Time, Tom, our friend Tom's dad, was filming us play some music, and he grabbed the camera and he went, "What am I filming?" And it was on video. Like, what am I filming? I
can imagine that so well.
And I feel like that is what this film leaves me with: is what am I filming?
Yeah. What has been filmed? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Bury Our Bones with Cinema. We really appreciate you joining us as we deep dive into the world of film. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media pages to stay informed. You can find us on YouTube, TikTok and Instagram at Bury Our Bones with Cinema. You've been listening to Jimmy Murphy, Simon Key and Ryan Etherington. We will see you next time for more cinematic discussions and hidden treasures. Until then, don't forget to keep your bones buried in the world of cinema. And it will be a one-button job. Boom, 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 toom, toom, toom.
I have a terrible tendency to just swear about but you're talking when we're doing it. I still find it slightly distracting.
It's a bit weird, but I think it's a bit weird. But I suppose
maybe if you listen to it back, see if it sounds. I was like, I'm gonna have to stop it because you're listening back.
Good job I observed that well, wasn't it?